applause for the folks that went ahead and walked with me on AIDS Walk. I definitely learned that I needed to get a little bit better in shape. I hurt the whole next day, you guys. It's a walk, but it's a long walk.
It's 10 kilometers.
It's 10 kilometers, which is, I think, about 8 miles. I also really want to thank the Axis of Love volunteers for helping me put everything together today. So let's give a round of applause for everybody who helped set this up. My dear friend John Lee, some of the people saw him on our show a couple nights ago.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Not quite Southern California, San Jose. So that's probably southern to everybody else.
It is,
right? But I have been to Southern California recently, and Shona talks about it because we actually have a group effort now. It's a statewide effort. Just a little briefly to tell you about what I am doing and who I am. I'm just one of you. 3 or 4 years ago, I was a medical cannabis patient in San Jose when it exploded with 100 different dispensaries, and San Jose had a difficult time deciding how to legislate it, and we know the state and the federal government has still to this day. And so I got involved, and I got in what's called grassroots, and I was sitting at tables with politicians and leaders and even advocates talking about what we could do for the average person, not the person that was running the dispensary necessarily, not the person that was growing, not the person that was making the cookies or anything else, but just you and I that needed it for our own needs. And I watched what happened in the state, and I watched Proposition 19 fail. And I watched us fail to get initiatives on the ballot in 2012. And then I met a lot of different people that were looking for help. And I was fortunate enough to have the time and the ability to get involved and say, hey, we can do more. And in the great state of California that we all live in, even though we've got our troubles, it certainly is one of the greatest states in the world for thinkers, but for some reason they couldn't pull it together. So I decided what we need to do was to unify. And that's a scary word in California because they've been trying to unify a lot of people for a long time. Well, we've done it now. So fast forward, we're in 2014. I had the fortunate opportunity to meet the man who opened up the first collective in San Jose, Dave Hodges. He, along with I and several other local operators and patients and other people got together and tried to do some coalition work. We rescinded an ordinance in San Jose by getting 30,000 signatures in 30 days. And
wow.
Excuse my numbers. I'm not a general public speaker. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a scientist. I try not to misspeak, but I talk from my heart. I talk about what I know, so I don't always have the perfect exact numbers, but I will soon. And I'll tell you why I will and why I'm learning as I go. I need to do this for all of us, and there was a small group of advocates that decided that we need to do about 4 or 5 efforts in 2012, and that's what happened in 2012, nothing. We couldn't get on the ballot because everybody was split, and we know that everything is revolving around money, unfortunately. The only way we're going to get this done is to raise funds. So as I got together with Dave and several others, we decided it was time to put a better initiative together by doing an open source document, and that's what Shona hinted on. This is the first time in history, and our legal teams have confirmed it, it's the first time in history, at least in California, where the document was created total open source, total grassroots, so everybody could contribute to it. That's very important. So, what does it mean to you? What it means to you is it was thought out by people just like you. If you may, I would hope somebody in here possibly contributed to it, but if not, there's still time because we're now running to deadlines, and that's why I'm here. At the end of September, we have to submit to the state of California, and I'm here to announce that we have confirmed that we are fully able to do that. We have the document presented. We have the legal team in place. We are going to make the deadline. There will be an initiative on the 2014 ballot.
All right.
I start to shake every time I talk about it, and I'm doing it. But I'll tell you, that's what we have to do. And when I say I'm doing it, I'm just kind of guiding some things. Dave and Shona and a great group out of Southern California, a Patients Advocacy Network, DJ Coutet, has a great team down there. I know her ears are probably burning because I mentioned her name. A wonderful advocate, Susan Soares. I can go down a whole list of names, but I won't do that because I'll forget somebody. But I want to mention that group because they're working with us right now to get this done for everybody. So once again, what's important to tell you and what it does for you here is in 2014 we want the people to be able to decide what our rights are for total prohibition repeal of cannabis and hemp.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the point, right? Now, what does that mean? Well, we're going to have, scary word here, I'm sorry, but we're going to have regulations. We live in a lawful society, we live with other people, so we have to have some form of regulations. What has to be done is we have to apply those properly, we have to apply those equally and fairly, and we have to make sure that we protect certain other rights. We have a proposition, we have a law in place, Prop 215 that came into place, put us in a medical world. Medical needs to be left alone, needs to be operated, medical needs to be non-taxed and available who need it for medical reasons can get their recommendation.
Wait, did you hear that? No tax on medical?
No tax on medical. Right. Now there's other realms. We're talking about that alone, but there's a whole bunch of things. I came here also to talk about jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot to this, and again, I said it's a cannabis and hemp prohibition repeal. We're talking about the opportunity for California to lead the charge, even though Colorado and Washington did their thing, we can lead the charge in a real industrial revolution. And these aren't fancy words and cliche words that I use because I learned how to say them up on a podium. We all know this. There's nobody in this room, I doubt, understands what it could do for the economy. And I'm talking about jobs, not just economy to give new plants, new trees, all the different things that we can make out of it. It's for you and I that need a job. And we need a job not necessarily growing. We might want to work in a commercial collective. We might want to drive a truck. We might want to trim. We might want to do scientific studies now, because when we pass this, medical people can start to do the studies that we hear about all over the world, but the federal government denies. So, again, we also understand that the feds are going to be doing some things soon. We don't know how accelerated it is, but that's why we need to protect ourselves. So another reason to do this is to make sure we have the infrastructure in place so that we don't get screwed down the road no matter what the feds do. Okay? So I shouldn't be that vehement about what the feds are. They are our government. We're fortunate to live in the United States for a lot of different reasons. It isn't the best for all of us, but it's what we're working with. So we have to work within the system, and that's what we're trying to do. So my main message again is we have an opportunity to put this initiative on the ballot. I have a little book with me here. Usually we try to do a sign-up sheet to see if we want to have volunteers. And what we do a little differently is, this is a San Francisco book. I want you, if you'd like to pass it around in the next few minutes, put your name, any contact information if you'd like to volunteer, or if you'd like us to communicate to you. But most importantly, I want some information for you if there's anything you want us to do. We think we've covered it pretty well. You'll be able to see the initiative. I can announce the name and the number where you can see it. I have business cards that I can give everybody. They can locate and use the initiative to review. We have at least a couple more weeks that anybody in this room can add a comment if they see something that's not in there that you want. So there's never been a chance where you can say, I was a part of the process, this is it. And not only are we talking about it, we're going to make it happen, it's going to be on the ballot. So if you get an opportunity, take the book. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to put anything under the note. Take a full page if you want, but help us. This is what we did. This is how we got here. We listened to you, and that's how we came to where we are. So now I'm fortunate enough to be able to say, I can drive this forward with a great team of people. We want more people, too, to get involved. We'll make formal announcements soon. We are creating a 501c4 nonprofit organization so large funders can begin to contribute soon. The reality is we're going to raise about $10 million to do this.
Yeah.
Pretty scary number, but it's the right number. We consulted with people. We knew what we were doing. We knew the number we needed. And this, again, is not just in Northern California and even Silicon Valley. This is Southern California and Hollywood money and all the other kinds of monies and outreach. $10 million is a drop in the bucket in California.
Denise.
How's this different than Jack Herrera?
How is this different than Jack Herrera? There's two initiatives. For many, many years, I don't know, how many people, can you raise your hand if you don't mind, does anybody know who Jack Herrera was? Okay. Jack was one of the originators of the movement in a lot of ways. And Jack wrote a book, co-wrote a book with several people funded by a very dear friend of mine. And the book was called The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Yeah. And we've all heard about it probably. If you haven't, you should get a chance to read it if you get a chance. It talks about, it enlightens everybody. And it was written originally 20 years ago, but it began to enlighten everybody about the facts. And it began ultimately what occurred in 1986 here in California, and all the different legalization efforts throughout the country were really at the root of that. There was an initiative written by Jack. Jack wrote at that time, and he believed in freedom of the plant, entire freedom. And he used to talk pretty big and strong all the way up until his untimely death about no taxes. Well, in our initiative, just to go on a little bit more, is there will be taxation at the commercial level. just like it is if you go into a store and you get taxed for other items. I won't go into the comparisons, but we have to do that, plus we have to do it to raise revenue. This is not going to pass in any state if we're not raising revenues to do something. And we're going to raise revenues to do what? We're going to raise revenues to do diversion programs to keep people out of jail. Nobody's going to jail anymore for marijuana, cannabis, or hemp, or any of the other names you want to use. So we create diversion programs. So how do we do that with limited taxes? We have some licensing. It's an interesting concept. It's done in a lot of other industries too. You can go out and you need to get a license to grow a lot of other crops. So growers can't just skate free. You can do certain things. As an individual, you're welcome to grow 100 by 100 or 100 square foot of plants yourself on your own property without any restrictions. So as an individual, you can do your own thing. And you also, if you have a medical card, you can go and get medicine untaxed. And if it works out, you can also go and buy commercially. So all those are going to be options in the initiative.
We have another question from
Please.
Mr. Jimmy Lee from
I'm
Texas.
sorry. Let me just finish. Jimmy, one second. So the question she asked was, what's the difference between our initiative and Jack Hare? Jack's initiative is old documentation. We've worked with the group now. It's the last group besides ourselves that had some interest in 2014. We're in communication with them. There's been some exchange of verbiage, but what we did is what we felt we could update what Jack's verbiage had done, and that group was a little reluctant to do that for a long time, so we had to take charge ourselves. And what happened is, once again, we didn't take charge, the people took charge. We had an open forum, we had conferences, we had meetings, and the people said, we want to rewrite something. We want something that's better than something that's current, something that addresses the PAC decision, something that represents the Riverside decision. So we're smart enough not to miss what we missed in 215 and other efforts. So that's one of the primary differences between that and a bunch of others, but that's primarily one of the differences. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. We have a question from Mr. Jimmy Lee. I don't know if you guys are related at all,
I
but
don't
he's
think
from
so.
Texas.
I'm completely new.
Cool.
But I've been studying it for a while.
Studying our initiative or the effort?
Cannabis.
There's a factory in Europe, actually, that has built their whole building out of hemp. Okay, and they have nothing to do with marijuana, nothing. They built their whole building because it was legal there, and that created jobs out of this world. It's an ever-growing crop, you know.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a 10-to-1. My question is, why is it so hard here to get the legislation needed to where we can build buildings literally out of hemp?
And
Well, again,
cars.
that's our intention with this. But just because we're going to pass this initiative, there's some other things you have to work within, again, working within the system. There's agricultural regulations, and then there's, of course, the feds, right?
Yes.
So there's federal regulations not only on the drug itself, but there's a crossover between hemp. There's a lot of legislation going on right now, if you are studying it, as you know. A lot of bills going in for agricultural and hemp, and crossing the line, determining what's non-THC based and hemp based. So a lot of that work going on. What we do in the state, we'll take care of that, and the feds are continuing to do that too. It'll take some time, but that's certainly going to open up before cannabis does, or more quickly and more readily than cannabis. And it's being done. So I'm not an expert on a lot of those issues, but certainly being addressed.
I'm new at this, you know.
But you know what? There's a lot of products that we can get that do have hemp products. One of the funders of campaigns for a long time has been Doc Bronner's. I don't know if you've seen his soaps, the liquid soap.
Awesome.
There's hemp in that product.
Yeah.
You know, there's hemp. I think there's still hemp seeds in your bird feed. I'm not sure. Things like that. So, and there's a bunch of others. Again, not being an expert, I can't speak to all of them, but there is some openness to doing that, and that'll be more readily done. But we're going to include that in the state of California to allow hemp agriculture, because that's what I'm talking about, jobs.
All right, we've got another question.
Yeah. What members of the state assembly besides Amiano has actually supported this?
What has supported our effort? Well, Amiano hasn't come out completely, hasn't supported us, but Leno, of course, too, is a good writer. I'm learning as I go, so apologize if I can't name names, but I'm hoping they're all going to come to us. I don't need to go out to them necessarily. We are approaching part of the way there. I'll tell you, part of the group, the organization that we've hired that's working with us is an organization that not only has worked on hemp bills, but they're the organization that helped settle getting the stadium built in Santa Clara for the 49ers. So this is a pretty skilled group. They know what the heck they're doing, they know how to get good money, and they can address this.
I'm a veteran, and there is a federal policy in place right now that does permit veterans to use marijuana as a medical treatment versus psychiatric medication. So there's already something there.
There's some right. It's limited though, because I know some people that have actually lost their benefits by admitting that they have use. So there's a line being crossed in a lot of different areas. And in fact, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I'm just wondering because our congressional folks out here, the West Coast, are more supportive right now, Northern California, whether perhaps we don't have more of a definition of that policy, or
For veterans?
I would be interested in pursuing that.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. The question is primarily, I don't know if anybody heard it, primarily about veterans and the retaining rights or guaranteeing rights. And he indicated there, excuse me, that there are programs that you can get rights currently. The veterans is a big issue. I actually participated in Oakville with some groups who were trying to develop some veterans affairs efforts related to jobs and trying to recover their benefits. What can we do at the state level? Well, what we do indicate in there once again is that it is restrictive to limit or discriminate against anybody. So we can't cross the lines and dictate what the military and the other groups can do themselves, but we make it illegal in California to do that. So it opens the doors up for you to be able to address it.
If you are a recently returned vet with PTSD from combat, they will put you on medical marijuana. If you're like me and you were a drug user back in the day, they will not let you use marijuana without taking away your mental benefits. So you have to be real careful around the VA when you even approach them about how you talk and say, hey, yeah, I'm a medical cannabis user. You could be throwing your whole benefit list away if you don't know. So you got to make sure you know what you're doing when you go talk to those people. But right now what they're doing is they're looking into people that recently come back that have PTSD from combat are getting put federally by the Federal Veterans Administration on medical cannabis. Everybody else, we're just kind of kicked out the door. So, you know.
Good words to the wise. So maybe what he's saying is if you're a veteran and you want to start talking to somebody about getting your medical cannabis card or how to approach that as a veteran, maybe the first step is going to a medical cannabis veteran advocate and finding out the right way to phrase it to your person at the VA so that you're not saying the wrong thing and ending up getting any of your psychiatric or medical benefits cut. And then I did see Mr. John Gallo's hand up, who's a student and has worked on students' rights with cannabis.
I was just wondering, how would that help the students as far as, you know, getting this on the ballot and getting it, let's say it gets passed, okay? And I know this is my political science class. Whenever there's a conflict between state and feds wins. Like when there's like with the grant, okay, college students get Pell Grants from the feds. It's because medical cannabis being on the
Schedule
same
1.
thing as, you know, LSD.
Schedule 1. Yeah.
Right. Okay, how would that help the students out as far as being patients and being able to use it on campus or near or something like that?
Okay, good.
There's lots of
A couple of questions built into there. That was a good one. And great questions. As far as students, let me tell you, in our particular initiative, it does make a 21 and older permission for free adult use. And the reason we did that, it's probably been the most talked about compromise in what we did. But there's, for a lot of reasons, we had to understand the compromises we had to make sure this is passable. That's the hardest decision. You know, when I was just sitting at the table with you, I scratched my head and just said, why the hell can't we get this done? Now that I know as much as I know how difficult it is and the compromises you have to make, but we can win and we can work with the compromises. So what I'm saying to you about what the students, a lot of students are below 21, right? Yeah, there is a penal code violation.
Your conversation, you're dealing with the federal grant, which the feds can set restrictions. You want, you know, this program, then you gotta say, we don't, you know, condone this.
Yeah, no, that's good, and I actually am going to take a note about that particularly because what we did address is we addressed people that had that from a job standpoint. If you go and apply for a job and you have previous drug conviction, first of all, we're going to purge records. We're going to do our best in the initiative and working on the writing to make sure that anybody who is in jail for a non-violent cannabis offense or marijuana hemp is released and the records are purged.
Yeah.
again, you can see there's a lot of detail in this, if you get the opportunity to read it, or I'll talk with anybody about the detail at any time. But in particular, what you're saying there, I don't know that we specifically addressed students and related to Pell Grants. I know we didn't address that specifically, whether it's on your record. But what it does say that there's no felony convictions for anybody below 21. This falls under penal codes, and that's the diversion program, as I said. So as an example, you're an 18-year-old, you get busted for pot, there's a chance you get a small fine and you go to a little 20-hour diversion program just like you would do with other things. But you also have parental permission opportunities blocked in there. As far as smoking on campus, I can't guarantee that's going to necessarily...
Being able, they really medicated or whatever.
Well, again, the drawing line or the cutoff line has to be 21 from a personal use standpoint. I don't believe that we can allow public smoking in a general public area walking down the street. I think we again have to understand the offense on others and other things, not just about our rights, but the others. So those are one of the things I think is kind of practical. But no, great questions, and at least related to students, I'm going to make a note of that because we didn't single out that particular group specifically in the verbiage, and if we can put something in there, I appreciate that, John. But as far as freedoms, you'll have the same freedoms. Once you turn 21, your total adult use. Prior to that, either parental guidance or fines related to penal codes and diversion programs. I hope that helps a little. If you want to talk some more about it afterwards, we can. Yeah.
Okay, we've got one more question over here from Marquise Osby. He was a candidate for the Medical Cannabis Task Force and has worked on several countries regarding medical cannabis as well as helping with black and brown drug policy. Marquise?
My question is,
Voting restrictions?
Somebody's on the ball here. So you paid attention to the Supreme Court case. The Riverside Inland Empire Supreme Court case that we lost on May 6th, what it did and and I'll just make a side note, the lawyer that fought that case for all of us, J. David Nick,
Awesome guy.
a wonderful human being. He put his neck on the line, put himself on the line, and he took a beating. And he put the word out there, and he set the stage for us. Unfortunately, we lost. But losing isn't always a bad thing. And J. David Nick, so you know, has vetted our document, along with several other attorneys, too, so we're working with the right people. The big decision that came out of that was zoning. The states and the cities were allowed to shut down collectives based on various zoning rights. And the question was, what did we do about it? We spelled it out clearly. And that's why our document is the particular length that it is.
Important issue is parents' rights.
Tough issue, and that's really one of the dividing lines, and where a lot of people are on the bubble about how we deal with home use. To be honest with you, as we still have a couple more weeks in the document, that's still something we're struggling with a little bit because we have to maintain rights, and one of the things that comes up is, of course, if you're out on a farm and you're a grower, and usually the family pitches in, right? So we understand the point. That's a tremendous point. How we address it, again, is there is a responsibility, and you have parental approval for young adults that can be fined. Whether the folks can go in your home and deal with that is another story we're still trying to address. So we're still ironing out that particular detail, but it does indeed have to address because that's what people are talking about. And that's why we created a bunch of fees related to diversion. When I say a bunch of fees, the growers and others, instead of paying taxes, pay fees that go into distribution to various services, including diversion. So we're setting the infrastructure for how people are going to deal with it, but exactly how it's enforced. We may be able to leave it somewhat vague. And that's something you learn when you're writing these kinds of documents, is you write the general procedures, you put the base information out there, and it's incumbent on the enforcement groups and others to write the legislation. And in fact, if you hear people talking, wait till 2016 because we have to do more legislation, we have to do more groundwork. Well, we are going to continue to do that. That will be done. We're going to set this umbrella initiative up so that everybody can work within it and get it moving forward.
As you're writing into the legislation, are they going to be required to be nonprofit? Because I've seen diversion programs that were supposed to be nonprofits or running as a for-profit, and sometimes they shuffle people in and just use different numbers to get profits. I'm wondering if diversion programs are going to be a nonprofit.
Don't know that, and I don't know if I'm pretty sure we did not address that specifically, but what we did is we assigned various departments to address this. A lot of people wanted us to utilize the ABC to try to regulate this, and that was turned off real quick because even though they have the infrastructure to know how to regulate it, there's a little bit of corruption going on there, so we want to avoid that. So we're putting an incumbent on consumer affairs and and the health department And that's really what this is. This is a legislative document, so we're changing health code and other codes so that we can address those kinds of things and have them administer it. And part of the initiative dictates that in a 6-month period, it's incumbent on them to administer it. That's what you do within the initiative.
Yeah, I'm concerned, it sounds good, but I'm concerned this might stir up the feds even more, and their attacks will be even greater on us.
I can't be concerned about that. We're looking at the feds and we understand it. Plus there's some other big opportunities. Just one point. Jerry Brown is running again. Jerry Brown's going to be on this ballot. And you know, we have some protection behind it. I'm not necessarily speaking about Jerry Brown or anybody in particular, but we have to understand who our supporters are, what the momentum does, and what happens on an off-presidential year election. People say that's a negative in some cases, but this current off year is preparation for our types of supporters to create legislation and support for the next 2 years in a real presidential election. So now that's a little less expensive and other reasons, but it's really key. But I appreciate what you're saying, but I think we have to.
Do you think Brown would support this?
He has in the past. He wrote several years ago while he was Attorney General. He wrote a supportive paper to legislation.
Applause for my friend John. Entering this campaign for 2014, ending prohibition on the ground level. You are some of the first people to start getting this word out. We're really, kind of breaking ground tonight and getting this out in San Francisco. So I will ask you, if you're going out tonight or this weekend to other patient gatherings or patient parties, or you have patients that you live with in your building, etc., start saying, we're gonna end this cannabis prohibition in 2014, because a lot of people are going to say, oh no, we're not doing that till 2016, and you can say, okay, well, you can wait, but we can't. So
Wait. It's one of these phony candles here. Is it going to fire? Well, this is wonderful. Everybody should do this together. But 2014 reality. I'm still a little bit in shock, but it is. So thanks again for everybody. And here we go. Yay!